Good afternoon. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. I am your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. Hi, Dad.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We are on part 4 of our Parenting 101 series, the things we need to be teaching our children about living consciously. Dad, before we left at the end last weekend, last Friday, we left off on one note that I wanted to bring up, and I kept thinking about it like all week that I wanted to talk about it. And it was one of the morals and values we were talking about was blaming versus taking responsibility, I think. And that was one of the things that growing up, I naturally just would always blame other people, or I would always lie to blame people to get out of trouble or whatever. So I was realizing that I probably still do a lot of those things, and I just don't pay attention. So this whole week I was trying to pay attention to see like how often I was doing it and how many opportunities there were to take responsibility. And there was actually a lot, even things that normally I wouldn't blame, but I also wouldn't take responsibility. There were a lot of things that just in my life, I guess, in that 1 week, that they're just things that happened that I just ignored. And I didn't realize that by not taking responsibility, meaning just because I didn't blame someone, by not taking responsibility also, I guess, had its own downfalls too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that when you don't look at everything and find the part that you played in either creating it or co-creating it or influencing it or inspiring it or giving it life, you separate yourself from all things. And when you start separating yourself from everything that happens in your life or that unfolds, it's very easy to default to the blame, like this happened to me. Things are happening to me rather than I'm influencing it. I'm a part of the creation of it. Even from the concept of the idea or my energy, somehow I caused and created to some degree whatever results are happening and what's showing up in my life. We can actually have a thought 10 years ago or have a very powerful intention 10 years ago and actually just now having the result actually show up and not even realize that we caused and created that.
Well, like I said, in this past week, I realized there was a lot of things that I wasn't necessarily blaming anybody, but I also wasn't taking responsibility for them either. And but the only reason why I wanted to bring it up again was I realized now that as a kid, I blamed so much, and I never it wasn't until I got older and we started this journey of consciousness that I started taking responsibility for things. And even in that, maybe like the last 10 years or so learning about it and what it means to take responsibility, I still revert back to it's really easy to blame and being the victim. So I just wanted to bring it up to let people know that even now at 22 years old, I'm still kind of playing those games like as a little kid, like blaming people. And I guess, we talk about these things, but this kind of was like the first one, like out of this whole series that I really was able to look at myself and say like, oh, wow, I do that. I can't believe it. And I'm 22 years old. Because looking at the other ones, beliefs, beauty, balance, all of those things that we've been talking about, it's kind of like, you hear it, but you don't, and you kind of identify with it, but you don't catch yourself really doing it.
And I think that's the purpose and the intention of talking about each one of these distinctions is to plant a seed into each listener and, have them be in the question about how much do I even myself understand fully what this distinction is. And then as I'm starting to grasp it and learn it at a higher level, then I also now get permission to teach my kids how to learn those things so that they can master their lives and they can be powerful, confident, assured human beings in our community.
Yeah, like I can't see myself in a couple, 10 years from now or whatever, teaching my teenager or my kid about blame versus responsibility if I'm not really 100% clear and I'm not sure and I'm not catching myself. And, because it's so, like I said, it's so easy to it's almost like natural, like we naturally just like fall into the blame side. But anyways, we can move on, but into our list. But I wanted to bring that one up because I was really struggling with it like the whole week. But I was doing it intentionally. Like, okay, how can I take responsibility for this, or how can even the things that I so badly, I 100% still believe are not my fault. I still was trying to say, okay, well, I guess this happened because I was there, or I showed up, or
and technically it's literally a game that you have to play, that you have to, it's like a tug of war between your spirit and your ego, because your ego has a default to always naturally blame and never want to take accountability for anything. So that's just in the wiring of the ego, is the blame game. And it's your spirit that is tug of warring back and forth with the ego, saying, no, we at some point either co-created or created these kinds of results. We played a part in it. And I think that's where the power is by trying to figure out inside of that game and that tug of war of finding a portion of how we played a part in the results that are manifesting in our life. So I'm glad that you gave yourself permission to do that, and then had that experience, and then shared it with us today.
Thank you. So moving on to part 4, I really wanted to, I guess, dive into these, but before we start, I also wanted to invite everyone who's listening to, just because I had this experience last week, I invite you guys to, do the same thing. Maybe pick one of these things and say, okay, you know what, this is what I want to work on, or I'm going to not even work on, just I'm going to see if I do this. I'm going to see if I come from that place, or if I have this intention. Just, listen with an open mind, and then pick one to focus on, like, for a week, and then just see what happens.
That's a great invitation. The next distinction that we want to go over today is competition. Competition is a word that I think is very common for people to look at it and then only see it one way. And I think as a default, we look at it and we go, okay, competition, I know what that means. That means I'm competing, me versus someone else. And a lot of times competing or being in competition coming from the place of me versus you, that it implies that one of us is winning, rather than competition. And sometimes you'll hear people use the word healthy competition, but competition doesn't just necessarily mean that one of us is winning. You can actually have a competition where everyone wins. There's a winning in all sides and in different areas. And I think that by default, if we let our kids just learn the word competition, especially if it's through sports, there's always seems to be one winner, one loser. Instead of teaching our kids this distinction that competition can be a process where everyone is winning, the question becomes, how do I find the winning even when ultimately I'm not the winner in the game? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I guess kind of what I'm hearing you saying is, as far as the kid's perspective, like a teenager, like you said, when you're growing up, competition is a winner. There's a winner, there's a loser. You play a game. Somebody's better than the other person. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying a little bit last week about comparing, how siblings like compare. And I think that like basically, like growing up, like with siblings, it's one big competition. Who's gonna get mom and dad's love today? Who's gonna come home with A's? Who's gonna get an award? Who's gonna so you're constantly in competition with your other family members, your siblings, or your friends, to get the attention that you need, or to get your parents to do all these things that we're talking about, like to be compassionate, to see your side, to be good parents and everything. So I think like you said, there's only, even though you're saying there's healthy competition and everything, I still can say personally that when I think of the word competition, there's a winner and there's a loser, and I want to be the winner.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is we've been conditioned to operate from that framework that in the word competition, there's only a winner and there's only a loser. But there's multiple layers to that distinction. And here's another example. Another layer to that is that we assume, right, we bring these assumptions into that word, and we assume that competition is just with other people, rather than that I'm in competition with myself. I'm in competition with the version of me yesterday, or I'm in competition of my last score, or I'm in competition with the results I got yesterday or last week. We can have a competition, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a negative connotation to it. But in order for that to happen, we have to have healthy dialogue and open up the possibilities, start teaching each other that competition doesn't mean that it's a negative word, and we have to start learning how to take certain words out and replace them with other words. Like you used the word just a few minutes ago about competition, that one of us is better than the other. What if we took the word better out and we just inserted it with, put a new word like effective? One of us was more effective, or one of us actually achieved the goal. What if we started using more neutral words that still had the same meaning? They just didn't bring a negative connotation to them or a backlash that made kids feel bad about themselves because they weren't better today, or they weren't the winner, which assumes that they were the loser today. So, we got to really start looking at some of these words, and as parents, we got to start understanding them at a little deeper level and really learn those distinctions and start teaching our kids these so they don't walk around the rest of their life disempowering themselves because they never really learned some of these words at a deeper level to help empower them to move forward in a healthy way, in a more neutral way.
So how do you teach your kids, I guess, like if there's a scenario like, let's say I'm trying to think of a sport that is okay, let's say your kid runs track, right? And someone beats them. Someone moves faster than them. How do you take that and compare it to like their, like you don't want to say, oh, okay, yeah, you're good, you're really fast, but that person was just faster. Because it's true, but they're your kids, and you don't, what I'm saying? Like, what are you supposed to say if you're not going to say they're better?
So I actually have experience with this, raising your brother in sports. A lot of times, majority of the time, I had him focus more on what he needed to improve within himself so that he could have a faster time for him, or he can have his own goals set for himself. So let's say in practice he was running certain routes as a football player, and they would throw him 200 passes. His goal was to catch 200 of those passes. But if yesterday he dropped 12 of them, his goal today was to catch more passes today than he did yesterday. So it took away the negative connotations to trying to beat somebody. When I was talking to him about competing, it was about competing with his own self and the limitations and the learning curve that he still needs to develop to get more effective, to be an improvement of himself. But I never really talked to him a lot about, hey, you got to be better than so-and-so, or you got to, it was never about having him be trying to beat somebody. It was about him improving himself. And I think that if every parent talked to their kids about improving themselves and staying focused on themselves and stop worrying about trying to compete with other people, they will be a lot more healthier competitor and a more seasoned champion in life, and healthier in their context of wanting to be the best at whatever they put themselves to or whatever they commit themselves to.
Yeah, I really like the whole taking the focus off of another person, because when you really think about it, even if you beat that person, there'll be someone else that you're going to have to beat, and then someone else and someone else. So it's like, as long as you can just keep beating your own personal goal and keep, moving yourself up that ladder.
Yeah, if you look at some of the champions, like in huge competitions like the Olympics, and you listen to a lot of times when they talk, a lot of them speak about the rigorous commitment they've had the last 3 or 4 years working on improving themselves. And they don't really focus on the other person, because when you start focusing on trying to beat someone else, your come from is coming from the wrong context. Your come from is worrying about, and even the worry is coming from fear, right? Like, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be better than the other person, rather than just focusing on improving yourself.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking too, like as a teenager, we're already, like we said before, like last week, we're already naturally like comparing ourselves to our friends and our family and everything. And I so wish now that, especially like a young, insecure, like teenage girl, that I was focusing more on the commitment to be a better me, or like I don't know, I'm just really identifying with the like competing with yourself, because I was focused so much on competing with the other girls to be prettier, smarter, faster, whatever, like that. I guess I just didn't realize that I could do the same thing, but like with myself, and I probably wouldn't have been as insecure or as sad if I didn't feel like I was better than that person.
And then, this is a whole nother topic and a whole nother show that gets a little bit deeper, because we can even slice that down a little bit more into not really competing with yourself, but competing with the actual results that you created. So here's an example of yesterday. I ran a certain time in a competition, whether it was a race or a marathon or it was a sprint, and I got a certain time. Then today I'm competing against the time. I'm not competing against myself, meaning like I am the time that was yesterday, because
we're saying that myself was bad.
Exactly, because a lot of times we attach ourselves and our own worth to the time that we did or our results. So if I'm attaching myself to the results rather than that's what I'm competing against.
But we do that with everything. We attach how happy you are or how successful you are based on how much money you make or what career you have, and those are the things that we're competing with. I want to be better than that person. They own their own business and they have 2 houses, and I want to have 3 houses. And it's a good incentive, I think, sometimes to push ourselves and inspire ourselves, but that's not really like what ends up happening. What ends up happening is we beat ourselves up, and our ego gets in the way and everything. That it ends up just making, like, at least for me, it ends up making me just sad when I can't beat somebody else.
Yeah, and so that's why learning these distinctions at a deeper level really has me mindful of, like, if I were to re-raise my kids again, if I had another chance to re-raise you or to raise my grandkids, I'm going to focus more on helping them learn these distinctions from a healthier place, such that they don't not learn them and carry all the negative and unhealthy attachments to some of these words, and have them be really they can be champions in life and earning a lot of money, or very successful with results, or a champion on the field of sports or whatever it is, but really be empty inside, really be lost and broken, and have a low self-esteem. And so I want a healthy overall human being as my offsprings, and that's why I've committed my life to one, learning myself and growing along the way of helping teach you guys, so that you can help teach your kids and pass it on to all of our generations.
Me too. I'm excited.
You don't look
but
very
it's
excited.
a lot. Well, I'm not excited because it even just this last week, focusing, like I said, I was focusing on that one, thing that I wanted to work on. And I was like, this is going to take longer than a week, because I wanted this week now to pick a new one. And I still feel like there's so much work to be done on that old one. And then there's so much work to be done.
They all take work, and it's all simultaneously. It's part of the awareness. It's just you being aware and then catching yourself on it. The problem is that they don't come all day every day. It's like, all right, Tuesday one, I noticed it, and then Friday it popped up again. So they're situational.
But if I was like just sitting there and paying attention to every single, like, micromanaging and picking at every single thing I did, I could probably find like 10 times in a minute, like something that I did that I wish I did differently, or that I could have done better.
Yeah, it's just a state of awareness. It's just coming from a place of noticing it. I'm noticing it without the judgment and the beating yourself up. It's just notice what you're doing, notice what you're choosing, notice how you're perceiving this, notice the stories you're making up about it. All those kinds of things is the starting point, and that's the level of consciousness that we are basically introducing people to. The next distinction is contribution. Contribution, to me, is really learning and discovering that you have a gift, that you were born with a mighty purpose, and that there's a gift that only you can give to other people, to the community, to the world, to anyone outside of yourself, including yourself. And so I think when people really realize that they have a gift and that there's something special and unique about them that other people want or need or can benefit from, all of a sudden this word starts to appear and you start to get clarity about how to share that gift and contribute it to the world. You're giving your gift and you're sharing that gift with other people. To me, that's what true contribution is. It's discovering that there's something unique about me and something, great about what I have or who I'm being or a certain quality or a certain talent, and then I get to offer that to other people so that it's a contribution, so it helps them, it builds them up, it pushes them forward, it supports them in a healthy way.
Yeah, and I'm kind of just thinking about all of the, I feel like especially as like a teenager, I was really able to be out there and like help and not just within the community, but like in my family. And, I was always probably out of like all of the kids, like us three, I was always the one that I felt like was always trying to be in contribution, always trying to do things for you and mom if I could, or go anyways. And I feel like the last couple of years, like as a young adult, you go through this like journey of, of panic almost. Like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, literally, if you have a young adult, they're going through this right now. Like, I guarantee it. Like, even if they seem like they know what they're doing, they're really like scared or in a panic of, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I need to either figure this out. I need to go to school. I need to graduate. I need to get a job. They're like panicking. And I realized that being a contribution for me was a distraction sometimes. Sometimes like it was too much for me, that I needed to start being a contribution to myself, which I know is kind of like a little bit of the opposite. It seems like maybe like a little bit selfish. Like, I really genuinely think that parents probably at this stage for their kids are thinking like, oh, my son doesn't do anything anymore, my daughter doesn't help around the house. Like, but you have to realize that the best thing for them, like right now at that stage, is to let them be in contribution to themselves, and then ask yourself how you can be in contribution to them. Because and sometimes being a contribution just is leaving them alone, like in the sense that you're not bugging them about, the chores when they're stressing over school, and you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you really don't have to do anything. It's in your not doing, and it's in your being that we always talk about, that really could be in contribution to your kid and serve them. And I just wanted to point it out because I know that the last couple of years I've been a little bit disconnected from the family in my contribution. Same with my brother and my sister. And I think that one of the best things that you and mom could have done for us was to let us do that. Let us disconnect and let us start, putting into our own bucket, so that when we do come out of this and I don't know when this is supposed to end, 25? My brother's like 26, and I think he's still in it. But eventually, we're going to come out of it. And eventually, you start figuring things out. And our bucket needs to be full before we can go out and contribute.
Absolutely. And that's why I said that the first part of it, because it's a two-part process. And the first part is you discovering what your gift is. If you're out there contributing and you don't know what you're contributing, you're just a doer. Because a lot of times we can find ourselves doing and helping other people, but we're really not helping ourselves. And so what happens is, a lot of times when you don't do that inner work and you're not discovering what your purpose is and what your gift is, and you're not filling your own bucket first and contributing to that, then what can happen is you can start having some regrets and some resentment, because you start looking back going, here I am helping other people when I'm not even helping myself. And that in itself is a breakthrough. That in itself is a whole new level of awareness to go, wait a minute, I got to first put the oxygen mask on myself before I can save other people. And that's just, a universal law and a principle that you got to take care of yourself first and then give from overflow. But collectively, the word contribution is to discover what your gift is, embrace it fully, and then from overflow, give it to the world and help other people.
Yeah, and I think what parents are doing is they're teaching their kids to be in contribution and not in overflow. It's like they're skipping over the bucket and then just giving instead of teaching, because that's what they do. They just give instead of teaching them to put into the bucket and let the bucket overflow.
I honestly don't think that parents are teaching their kids the distinction to give. I think parents are just unconsciously taking from their kids.
That could be it too. We had to take a quick break, but stay tuned for more of the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
The best live theater can be found right here in the Santa Clarita Valley. The Canyon Theater Guild has been entertaining audiences for decades with top quality musicals and plays. Located on Main Street in Old Town Newhall, CTG also offers workshops for the young actor in your family. For more information, call the box office at 799-2702 or go online to canyontheater.org.
Six Flags is open every day of the year, so come celebrate spring break at the thrill capital of the world. Go higher on Goliath, go faster on Tatsu, go for a 360 spin on X2. Year-round thrills, year-round fun, year-round savings. Go to sixflags.com for big discounts on daily admission or season passes. Save up to 50% on a 4-pack of passes and get Hurricane Harbor passes free. Go big, go Six Flags.
Celebrate Easter weekend for a life-changing, awe-inspiring, unforgettable service depicting the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This Saturday, March 31st at 2 p.m. and Sunday, April 1st at 5 a.m. at Vasquez Rocks. The pageant-style production features music, authentic costumes, and village set decorations. Paramount Studios donated materials and labor to build a historic tomb for the resurrection. The services are sponsored by the Evangelical Coalition of Christian Churches of Acton, Agua Dulce. Admission is free. For more information, go to thesunriseservice.com.
It's not too late to start your finish at College of the Canyons. They have short-term classes starting in the next few weeks for all kinds of people. People who need weekend classes, people who like photography, people who like rock and roll, stargazers, cartoon lovers, wine enthusiasts, and more. Need flexibility? Check out the online classes they offer. There's never been a better time to start your finish. Visit canyons.edu/class schedule.
You've seen them on Spot TV's Bar Rescue. Now experience the Cajun Belle in Canyon Country. The Cajun Belle, a terrific mix of SoCal Creole and the most flavorful handmade cocktails in our valley. It's the happening place, beginning with Blues Night every Wednesday from 7 to 11. Thursday is karaoke night with all-night happy hour featuring $1 tacos. Friday is Ladies Night with the coolest DJ in town. Check out live cover bands every weekend. The Cajun Belle on Soledad opposite the Canyon Country Post Office.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. We are on part 4 of our Parenting 101 series. In case you missed the show earlier or any of the last couple of weeks, you can find the podcast online. We're going over our a few distinctions, a few like morals and values that we think that we've decided are important to be teaching not only your teenagers and you know your young adult kids, but some of them too I think stem from a really young age, like a lot of the things that we've been talking about, like for example earlier we were talking about like taking responsibility for things, and I think that if we were to instill that in our kids when they're younger, like maybe I don't know, like 6-7 years old, like you know, especially like when they start going to school and everything, then we can kind of, there's a lot of really good examples that we could give to the kids, like when they're, let's say they're in kindergarten, right? And they get, I don't know, like in a fight or something at school. You know, you can start teaching them like how to take responsibility, even if they were the ones, you know, that were being picked on or something. So I think these not only go for parents that have teenagers and young adults, just because that's like my age and everything, because I can see how learning these things would have helped me when I was really young, like, you know, kindergarten age. And I know that's really, really young to be teaching kids morals and values, but sometimes it starts earlier than that. Like, why do you think that they're too young for that? I just think that their little minds are so, you know, like they're so innocent and so, you know, they're maybe like they're not capable of holding all that information, but I think that's when they're the most capable of holding that information. I think we do a disservice to our little kids because we live out of the assumption that they can't understand what we're talking about. And I think that if we
if we prepare it in a certain way, or if we do it in a story, or if we explain it to them, the same way that when you were little and it was a moment where you started lying to me, I remember sitting you down and explaining to you in plain English that if you continue to lie, that certain people aren't going to trust you in your life. And then I asked you the question, is that something that you want, where you have people in your family that don't trust you? And you looked at me with these crocodile tears, and you knew exactly what I was saying, and you said no. And it clicked for you, and you ended up making this profound shift in your life and started telling the truth. And that shocked me as a young father, because I lived in the assumption that you didn't understand these distinctions or these principles or values. And that's when I realized, man, kids are sharper than we think they are. And I think this is exactly when we should start teaching those values and those principles, is when they're young.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of going back, thinking, let's say like the typical, when I'm saying young, I'm thinking like, kindergarten, preschool, first grade, like, 5 years old or younger. But I'm kind of thinking about it now, and I'm realizing that there's a lot of things that, one, they might not actually be able to really like comprehend yet, but as they get older, it's, I think, your job as parents to notice like, oh, okay, this is a really good opportunity to teach my kid about this, because up until this moment they've never ran into this problem before. So let me take this opportunity, because if you don't, they learn whatever they learn about it, and then when it happens again, that's all they know is whatever that they have like made up on their own. So I think that, like we say this all the time, parents are really busy and they're not really paying it, they're not able to pay attention every single day, like everything that's happening with their kids. But if they at least take the time at the end of the day, maybe like before you're going to bed, to say, okay, what did I notice about my kid today, or what did I observe? Because sometimes there's no time in the moment. Like you could see your kid doing something and not really have time to realize like, oh, this is a good learning opportunity for them. But maybe later at the end of the day, when you reflect on your day, you could say, oh, okay, you know what? I should have told them this. I'm going to tell them tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that if we really take the time to explain to them that what they're doing or the choices that they're making, how it could affect them moving forward and how it could affect them in the future, I think they're sharp enough to pick that up and grasp those things. But what you were talking about is, as a parent, being aware of the moments that become teachable moments. And the teachable moment is just nothing but a possibility that opens and closes like a window. And when you notice something and you notice a teachable moment, and then you don't take advantage of it, and it closes and it goes by without you getting back in there and course correcting it, or getting in there and talking about it and having that discussion so they have that breakthrough, what happens is they make up a belief that the way I did that is working for me. And then they continue to do that same pattern over and over again. And that pattern could be a negative behavior that's not really working for them, but because you didn't notice it and you didn't course correct it, that's just a pattern that they're going to continue to do over and over again until they become teenagers and you go, wait a minute, where did you start doing this? And I hate to tell you, but they've been doing that since they were 4 or 5 years old. You just never noticed it, and you never course corrected it. You never saw the teachable moment, and you never went in there and started doing that work.
Or maybe you did try, but it wasn't in the most effective way.
Or maybe you tried once, or you explained to them once. It's funny because parents live in the illusion that if I explained it to you one time, you're supposed to get it. And that's not how it works. The way it works is that I've explained it to you one way, and if I'm noticing and it still hasn't worked, I got to keep figuring out how to explain it to you in different ways until it finally lands, and then now I'm noticing the course correction and the behavior shift. If you haven't learned it yet, like if your kids haven't learned how to take the trash out yet and they're 15 or 16 years old, well, obviously you haven't figured out how to get them to understand how important it is to be a contribution in the home and do their part and take the trash out. But a lot of times as parents, we want to blame the kids and make it about them that they're not getting it.
Yeah, and before we move on, I just want to point out that, especially like as a young kid, that's like when we're learning everything and kind of like creating habits. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. We're creating habits, and then, like you said, all these years later, they're old. I'm trying to think of a scenario. That's why I'm stumbling on my words. Let's say, you have two kids, right? And they're young and they're playing, and one of them hits one of the other ones, and you just tell them, you try to course correct them. You tell them, hey, don't hit your brother. Okay, and then that's it. And then a couple weeks later, they're at school and they get in trouble because they hit someone. And then they come home and you're mad because you're embarrassed. Like, you can't be hitting people at school, whatever, you yell at them. And that was your second attempt to course correct. And then that goes on, and then they're in high school and they get expelled because they were in a fight. And you're like, how could you do this? I can't believe, I can see how parents are trying, like, to course correct their kids. Like, there's nothing wrong with that scenario. Let's say all those years go by and that's like the same method you take every time. But 15 years or so went by where you did the same thing and nothing really changed. Like, you don't want your kid to be 25 years old, instead of picking them up from school, you're picking them up from jail for getting in a fight. So, it's kind of like if you look at like the little things that kids do and realize that if you're not changing it or course correcting it in the most effective way for them, that it's going to end up showing up again later. And obviously that's like a dramatic version because it's physical, but there's ones that are so small and tiny that, even like the lying, like when I was younger, like I could be 25 years old telling these big grand lies that just...
You could be a total master manipulator, a narcissistic manipulator that's just manipulating people, and, your whole context would not be solid. It would be just very unhealthy. But, when you're talking about the course correcting, and I love the example you gave about the child that's hitting people or not keeping their hands to themselves, and you have the parent that is constantly doing the teachable moment. The distinction that's going to make it be more effective so that after the 3rd or 7th or 12th or 20th course correction, the magical ingredients that's going to cause them to actually have the wake-up call is the beingness. We keep forgetting that it's who you're being or who you're not being in your course correcting and in your teaching of your kids that's actually landing or not landing. And I think parents unconsciously assume that if they just talk to you and do the course correcting, rather than looking at who they're being while they're doing the course correcting, they don't understand how powerful our being is. Like, if I really focus on who my kids need me to be when I'm course correcting them, I can have that course correction happen in 2 or 3 sessions. Versus somebody that's not focused on their being and is just keep course correcting from the doing, they can go 20 years trying to course correct that, and their kids can be 40 years old still not having had learned that lesson. So that's a magical ingredient, is who are you being while you're course correcting, rather than just thinking that just doing a million of the course correction from the doingness is going to make the difference.
Yeah, and I do like how you pointed out like the doing side, because I think it's so easy just to, because you are course correcting. If you yell at your kid and punish them for hitting a classmate or something, you are doing something. You are parenting,
and you are interjecting, and you are letting them know that's not right, and you're doing all that stuff. And this is where I have parents that they get mad at me, and they're like, "Alex, I've done all that." And I could be on stage or in front of a group, and I'll do Q&A, and I'll have a parent that's frustrated, and they're like, "Alex, I do all that. I've been doing that for 15 years." And then I tell them, okay, but when you're doing it, if you're not focusing on who you're being while you're doing it, and you're not fully aware that it's going to take a different way of being and a different come from while you're doing that to actually cause the result to be shifted. A lot of people don't understand what I'm talking about. It's like I'm speaking a different language. And that's why I wrote the book, because it's teaching you the premise between do, have, be, and be, do, have. And that's the magical ingredients that they really need to understand is, who am I being when I'm saying this? And if I can be vulnerable this time, and I can be compassionate, and I can lower my voice and be soft and loving, my son or daughter might hear it in a different way, and it actually might flip a switch inside of them that they actually get it, and they're actually learning that lesson, and it's causing a shift in their behavior and their habits.
Yeah, the B is a challenge for me. I think it's a challenge for everybody. It's even challenging sometimes to explain it. Like the other day, me and my mom were doing like a speech at the women's conference at COC, and someone asked, oh, okay, so how do I be when I want my kid to clean their room? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I really genuinely just could not explain the come from, like, even as the kid, what I need my parent to be when they want me to come clean my room. But I can tell you what doesn't work. I can tell you how not to be, because I've seen it so many times. I've seen the yelling. I've seen, okay, you need to clean your room. I've seen the little smart remarks in the comments. So I think kids don't really know what they really want you to be, but they know exactly what they don't want you to be.
And it's funny because I can actually answer that question, and I'll do it now. The problem is people can't hear what I'm saying. That's the struggle. So here's the answer to that question. What your kids need you to be in those moments is loving, vulnerable, creative. They need you to be playful. They need you to be inviting. They need you to be neutral. They need all of those different ways of being all together so that they feel safe enough to be able to think for themselves, to not beat themselves up and feel bad and wrong because they're not doing what you're asking them to do. So all of those different ways of being is who you need to access at a deeper level to get them to want to be able to go and do whatever it is you're asking them to do. The problem is that most people, when I explain that answer, they go, I already do that. I already do this. I already do that. I already do this. And it proves my point is that just out of your own mouth, you're saying that you're doing those things. And those ways of being are not doing. They're a way of being. So you just don't, if you don't fully understand what the being is, you got to go back and you got to start learning this distinction, because it's literally the magical ingredients to be able to have this extraordinary relationship with your kids where you can be able to influence them to do certain things that they don't want to do.
Yeah, and you know what I'm kind of realizing? Like, I know we kind of got really off topic from the list, but I really wanted
What list?
I know, huh? But I really wanted to point this out that even right now when you were explaining like the room cleaning thing, I was thinking of how can I be to get my boyfriend to understand how important it is to me that he takes the trash cans out to the side of the curb every week? Like, that bothers me so much that I feel like I ask all the time and he never does it. And so while you were explaining that, I was thinking like, how could I be that way? How can I be those things? Because I know I'm not. I know that I'm doing what all the parents are doing that are unconsciously.
Which is what you said. It's what we know what we don't want you to be. You're being
all
those.
I'm doing the whole like.
No, you're being all those.
Oh well, yeah. I'm being like the annoying mom that's like
disappointed, upset. You're being all those and you're projecting all that in. Well, that's not going to cause a shift in him.
Yeah, it's like not working. So I just wanted to point out though that it's happening like in all of our relationships, not just, and that's why I do this stuff. And that's why I, do this show, because I'm not a parenting expert. I'm not even, I'm not a relationship expert, but I am an expert at being a teenager and a young adult.
That's right.
I probably, especially in this day and age, I have the most experience out of all the parents because I know what it's like, to be on this side. But, experiencing in my other relationships, so what it's kind of like sometimes to be in the parents' shoes, I can see how frustrating it is, and I can see how upsetting it is sometimes to, and sorry, but I can see how frustrating it is sometimes to fight for something, like your kids or people that you love, and it's really hard, and I think I'm emotional right now because there are so many times where I've seen you guys as my parents like fight for me and want me to do good, or me to be better, or even if it's, taking the trash out, even if it's something small, but, us kids were really self-consumed. We really have like our own life that's outside of yours. We have our own, like the trash can's not important to us. We don't care about those things, and you guys do. I mean, I care about it now because I'm older, but I can
I feel like at this age and in my consciousness, I can see both sides so much that, sometimes it's really hard when we're talking about things on the show not to cry and not to sympathize, just with the teenager or just with the parent, because, I can see how frustrating it is for the parent. And I think you guys as parents are expecting your kids to know that stuff, and they won't. They don't. Even I'm barely like dabbling in seeing what it's like to sometimes be like the bossy parent, or be like, you know what I mean, like to anyways, I don't know if it's any of this is even making sense to anybody, but just know that your teenagers are not, especially like teenagers 15, they are not thinking about what you want from them. They're not thinking about how every day they can wake up and please you and be the best kid ever. They're not doing that. So, why don't you wake up and say, okay, how can I be the best parent today? And then that'll, like eventually start to rub off and teach them to kind of, start doing the same too.
Yeah, that's great insight. And it's okay to cry on the show.
Thank you.
Because you have permission to share that insight, and that's powerful insight for us parents to hear your side and to put ourselves in your shoes, to remember that you guys, like you said, you have your own little world, that you're struggling with things, and we forget that. But before we go on a break, I want to just kind of reiterate that, for me, having you and your brother and sister take the trash out was never really about the trash, because I could take the trash out myself. Taking the trash out is a symbol for you guys learning how to take responsibility and contributing to the team and the family, so that we're all doing it together, such that when you become parents, you know what it's like to be a part of a team where we're all doing our part. So sometimes as kids, you guys don't understand that we're trying to teach you guys something, and we're utilizing the roles in our home and the job duties to try to teach you some valuable life lessons, so that when you learn them in our home, you know how to function in the real world. We try to simulate our home and hold you accountable for the choices you make and have the consequences. And we do all that so that you know what the real world is like, and we're trying to prep you for the real world by simulating real world experiences in our home. That's why in your mind, when you're like, I don't care about the trash, that's not what I care about, but you don't understand that we're utilizing taking the trash out as a symbol to be able to teach you a valuable lesson.
It's just like I want you to want to wash the dishes. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll explain it when we come back from the break. Stay tuned for more of the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
Santa Clarita, bedbugs are taking over our city. They've invaded our homes, our businesses, and most importantly, our sleep. If you have suspicious bites that appear nightly, or have a bug that you need ID'd, your best option is to make one call to All Pro. We offer a 100% guarantee that your bedbug issues will be solved with heat in one treatment. No need to tent or spray your house with chemicals. Heat is all you need. Call 661-298-2200 or text me a bug picture to 661-645-0540. It's time to sleep tight again, SCV.
The Santa Clarita Artists Association has a new gallery in downtown Newhall on 6th Street between Main and Railroad, right across from the Canyon Theater Guild. The gallery features our members' paintings, sculptures, and one-of-a-kind handcrafted gift items. Whether you're an art lover, buyer, or an artist wishing to join, visit our website at santaclaritaartist.org, come to our free monthly meetings at Barnes & Noble, or stop by the gallery. For upcoming events and exhibits, check us out at santaclaritaartist.org. We make visual art visible.
All-Star Sports Grills is the best place in town to catch a Dodger game on one of their 17 screens and choose a cold one from 23 different tap beers. All-Star Sports Grills prides itself on their fresh, made-to-order menu, including half-pound Angus burgers. Enjoy an all-star comedy show the fourth Wednesday of the month. All-Star Sports has a pet-friendly and smoking patio. All-Star Sports Grills on Bouquet Canyon, north of Plum Canyon.
If you'd like to take your business up a notch, take a look at Elite Magazine.
Linda and Mo Hafizi, owners of our Valley's two leading magazines, the Magazine of Santa Clarita and Elite.
I'm so proud of Elite. It allows your advertisement to stand out. We distribute Elite to 50,000 homes and businesses. You'll find us in 1,900 local hotel rooms.
Discover how Elite Magazine can help your business. Call 294-4444.
Superior quality is second nature to us. Just ask our advertisers.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Dad, before we went on the break, we were talking a little bit about us, how, doing things like for people is like a symbol a little bit. And I had mentioned that, taking the trash out, like, if you're a teenager, taking the trash out is like a symbol to your parents for, taking responsibility and everything. And I had mentioned the saying, I want you to want to do the dishes, which is from, I'm trying to think of
Why Men Can't Jump.
Is it? Oh, I'm thinking of a different one with Jennifer Aniston and
I think the Why Men
Vince
Can't
Vaughn.
Jump is I want you to want to get me a
glass of water. Okay,
Yeah.
The dishes one is Jennifer Aniston, and she's asking Vince Vaughn, like her boyfriend or husband, to do the dishes, and they get in this big fight, and he's like, fine, I'll do the dishes, and it ends like that. She's like,
No,
it's not about
I
you doing
want
the
you
dishes.
to want to do the dishes.
Yeah, she's like, I want you to want to do the dishes, and he's like, why would I want to do the dishes? And it kind of like that's like a symbol, not just for a parent-teen relationship, not just a regular relationship, but every single relationship that we have, the business ones, professional, our friendships, whatever. It all comes down to you. People want to feel important. They want to feel like we're doing something, like somebody's doing something for them, or we're going out of our way for them because we care about them or we care about this relationship. And I really, really genuinely think that when it comes to you being a teen, your teen and parent relationship, your teenager doesn't know that this is a symbol. Your teenager doesn't know that taking the trash out means that, you're finally like responsible and you're this great kid and your parents are proud of you. They don't think anything like that.
It's okay. Some parents don't even understand that distinction, or haven't even really consciously put the thought into, why do I ask my kids to take the trash out other than so that I don't have to do it myself? I don't think parents really sit down and realize that your job as a parent is to find things in your home to be able to teach them certain things so that they can go off in the world and navigate their life in a very powerful way, to be confident. Because you got to remember, your kids are going off into college. They're, for the very first time, they're going to have to feed themselves, wash their own clothes. They're going to have to start to, do certain things to start being an adult. The question is have you properly prepped them for that? Have you gave them enough instructions? Have you mentored them? Were you their advisor? Did you set them up with homework? Did you ask them or invite them to help you, change the oil in your car? Or have you invited them to do a project that you're working on? That's the key question you want to ask yourself is, are you utilizing your home in certain scenarios to be able to teach them those life lessons and those distinctions? And
I really like, earlier before the break, you had mentioned, you were saying, I don't need you to take the trash out. I can take the trash out myself. It's not about that. And, it's just, for me, I had we grew up like that. We grew up like having to, do things and to be responsible and, have our commitments and everything. So it was really confusing to me to go to college and see a lot of people that didn't know how to do laundry. Like I had to teach so many people how to do laundry, like my first year. But I guess I'm getting the outro song. That's it.
It's like nowadays it's like the gong for those of you that grew up in the 70s.
Thank you so much for joining us today. You can join us for part 5 next week, and we're here next week. We're here every Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. right here on your hometown station, KHTS.